Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about the design of cars, specifically producing an idea generation page for a car design. Before I go through that, I'm going to talk about the main design principle which drives car design, so to speak, and that is proportion. Very, very important aspect of car design. A well-proportioned car straight away can look aesthetically good or aesthetically pleasing. Cars that are out of proportion can often be jarring. Now, as I say that, I'm not saying that this is a hard and fast rule, but I am saying it's a really good idea before you start designing cars to understand the proportions that underpin general car design. So I'm going to start with family car. As you can see in front of you, we've got a bunch of circles, so 3 circles high and what have we got, 8 circles wide. Those circles represent the wheels. So the wheels are the stage for the proportions of the car. So basically everything is measured off the wheels. So what we've got first is we've got a family car or a basic sedan. That's usually got a longer wheelbase. So you can see that you've got 4 full wheel widths between the front and the rear wheels. You can see that the height of the sedan goes just a little bit above 2 wheels high. And then generally the windows sit at about 1/3 the way up. So if we shuffle that across now to a 4-door hatch, we've got only 3 wheels between the wheels now. The car's a little bit taller, so proportionally the wheels are smaller compared to the car. So you can sort of see how that changes. And then what we're going to go is we'll move into a family SUV now, which is very, very similar. So there's not that much difference in the proportions between a small hatch and a family SUV. However, they are much larger in scale. So you're looking at different scales. So whilst the wheel to car proportion is about the same, the wheels are of course much bigger on a family SUV. And the final one, which will be the one that I'll be doing today, is we've got a super sports car. So generally they have a very long wheelbase and they're much, much lower. So they're much less than 2 wheels high if you compare that to the other designs. So really, really important that we get those proportions understood. As I said, you can tweak those proportions, you can shrink the wheelbase a bit, you can make it taller. It's not a definitive rule, but it's a really good guide to start. And I would recommend starting by drawing at least one car to standard proportion, just so you can get a bit of a feel for how that works, and then you can choose to modify those proportions to suit your requirements or a unique aesthetic you might be trying to achieve. Alrighty, so let's get started on the drawing component. So my tools today are, of course, I've got my circle templates here. It's got a bit of a French curve, but whatever you need to use there. I've got a ruler, of course. I have an F pencil, and I've also got a 6B pencil. So of course we're going to be starting with the F pencil because we want to draw up really, really lightly. I've got an eraser as well, which is going to help us too. And I don't know where I've put my sharpener, but it's probably going to have to rock up before I get started on the 6B component. So first things first, and this is what I always encourage students to do, is to map out roughly what you want your page to look like. So I'm going to be going, I'm going to draw a car just up in this top corner here, and then I might maybe draw a sort of a side front angle there. I'm going to draw another car over here, and then maybe a rear angle over here. So that's roughly how I'm going to be laying out my page. So first things first is let's get a ruler, and we're just going to draw the baseline. So one of the things that I strongly recommend you do with car design is stick to very low angles when you're first designing, because you're really, for starters, aesthetically it looks better, but it also makes the drawing process a bit simpler, and it's a bit easier to communicate the shapes that people associate with cars. So generally they're seen from the side or at some sort of low angle. Very seldom do you stand one story up from a car and look down on it. So that's why I'd recommend doing that. I feel like it's a much easier way to go. So what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to just start by drawing my wheels in. So I'm going to draw this wheel here, and then 1, 2, 3, and then maybe about 3.5. So I'll start, oh, I lost track, 1, 2, 3, and then I'll start around about there. So there you go, pretty easy start. And of course we're doing a super sports car, so we'll do that second wheel, and as we noticed that the super sports car is a little bit under, or a bit under the height of 2 wheels for a car. So drawing that guideline there, and we of course know that the sill, I suppose we'll call it, or the windows start about 1/3, maybe a little bit lower than that, about 1/3 the way down the car. So that's your rough proportions. Again, roughly speaking, we've got the back about half a tire or half a wheel length towards the back, and then about half the wheel length towards the front. Generally, of course, it tapers down. A few other things to note is that you generally want the windows to start a little bit behind the back of that front wheel arch, and generally the windows will finish, depending on how big you boot, somewhere close to the back of that wheel arch. So moving along from there, it's kind of up to you how you want, how slanted you want the windscreens, but you can kind of see there that that's a pretty slanted windscreen there. So drawing that. So at the moment, our main goal is to just box out roughly what this car's going to look like. So once you've drawn the proportions, of course, you've got that opportunity then to explore the different design options. So what I've found there is that I think that's even, you'd be surprised just how much those windscreens slope. So something like that. So we've got ourselves a pretty good proportion to start with. What we can do after that is perhaps we want to work on our kind of 3/4 rear view of the car. So so let's have a crack at this. Of course, using our taller ellipses here, and same deal again. 1, 2, 3.5, and then we'll draw that other one there. And then of course, same deal goes. We can get our little ruler out. We of course know that, see, that's about the height of the ruler there. So let's just stick with about that as the height. About there and there for the windows. Notice that this window is actually going to be quite tall because it's almost direct onto the camera. And kind of just making up some proportions now. It's a terrible ruler. It's all bendy. I don't know why it does that, but so we'll draw up. We've got some rough proportions there, so you can kind of see that's about how my car's looking from some kind of a rear side angle. It's going to make more sense as I continue to refine it there. So of course, if you can just imagine that that's the rear tail lights there, and you got your front pillar kind of going along there, and so that's kind of that side angle. You add a bit of depth to your tires there, or to your wheels. We'll do another one. I'm going to do another car here. So same deal again. I'm not going to go through this too much more than I am. So I'm just going to quickly 1, And there we go. So that's starting to look pretty suave there. So we've done our measurements. Obviously, I'd be doing another car over here, of course. I've done that rear angle again. I probably would have done that from the front, but we'll forget about that because I'm just going to work on these ones for now. So let's start on the first one. Now, the main thing that you're going to want to consider when you're drawing cars is that less is more. So you really don't want to overdo your lines. You want to basically communicate the functional lines and some contours, but you really don't want to go overboard because it's a bit like portraiture. The more lines you draw, it just makes it sort of look a bit, well, the more lines you draw in portraiture just makes someone look older, but the more lines you draw in cars, it kind of just starts looking a bit too busy. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to make this a really nice sort of smooth, geometric kind of car. So I'm going to use, if I was going to talk about form and shape in my design here, I would say that I'm using sharp geometric lines to formulate this design. And I'm going to do an example, a converse example of this. I'm going to use sort of more organic and flowing lines for the second car design. So we can kind of see there, we've got a bit of an idea of what that's looking like. Draw your doors in. And you've got yourself a pretty good start for your car. Now what you're going to want to do is, of course, try to consider some things that you could do to make your car interesting and stand out a bit more. So generally, you've got some vents that you could consider putting in. So let's just maybe slot some of them in. So you can kind of see that my approach is that you come up with a rough philosophy. So my philosophy here is kind of geometric and straight lines for this particular one, and my philosophy for the next is going to be a sort of counter to that. It's going to be kind of smooth flowing lines. So you end up with something like that. Try to incorporate some sort of unique aesthetics. As I said, there is that temptation to really go overboard with car design and try to come up with things that are well outside the box, and you absolutely can do that. But it's very important before you embark on thinking outside the square that you first determine roughly what the square should look like, if that makes any sense at all. So there we go. So we've got our first design. That's all looking pretty good. A few different things you can do. Let's just put a 4-spoke pattern on the tyres there. On the wheels, I should say, sorry. With the wheels, they're a really great opportunity to make the car look interesting and unique, but also generally car design should be a little bit more about the actual design of the car. So don't feel like you should be spending too much time doing amazing wheels. I generally just do a really simple wheel design. So just to make it a bit interesting, I'm putting the headlight, I'm sort of making that drag way around the edge. And I'll do a similar thing with the tail light. Something like that. We could perhaps do some door handles. And now you're just kind of adding in features helter-skelter. And that's roughly it. So that's what you would do for that. I would probably transpose that same design or a similar design onto that side view. I'll leave that with you as to whether or not you wanted to give that a go. The next thing we'll do is I'm going to just try experiment with smooth flowing form. So as opposed to this is quite sharp and geometric. So this time round, similar proportions. We haven't changed the proportions much at all, but I'm trying to. Now this is a bit more about perhaps the way that Ferrari goes about their design. It's not necessarily something that I'm highly. I generally prefer the straighter designs, so say like the old Corvettes, but of course both have their merits. And with idea generation, the goal is to experiment with lots of different ideas and see what you can come up with. So as you can see, no more straight lines like this one. I'm doing really nice curves. And I might maybe just kind of change the wheels a bit there. And let's go full Ferrari. Let's whack some tail lights, like some Ferrari-like tail lights there. So there we go. So all of a sudden we've got two very, very different ideas. Both have their merits and both can be talked about, but yeah, that's generally what you're trying to do. So, and again, the main thing that's helped me with my aesthetic here is just sticking to good proportions. So again, can't advocate that enough. So we draw our little baseline there, and all of a sudden we're off and running. So I'm going to hit pause, and I'm just going to quickly go through the rest of the design. I'm also going to sharpen my 6B pencil, and then we'll move on to this next step, which is finishing off your idea generation by making some of the lines darker and adding some shading. So we're going to move on to that. Alrighty, so I've gone ahead and sharpened my 6B pencil, and I've just quickly sketched up sort of a 3/4 side view of this. I'm not going to bother with the rounded one, but yeah, with your idea generation, of course, it's about getting as many ideas on paper as possible, but it's also about trying to effectively communicate. So I would recommend do 2 different views if you really feel like there's some information about that the back of the car or the front of the car that you feel like wasn't effectively explored during the side design. But yeah, if you do the side design and you feel like that's good enough to communicate or to have explored that idea enough to give you an idea whether it's got legs, so to speak, then yeah, then use this space to do a completely different design. It's really up to you there. But so I've got my 6B out. So now basically it's just a case of darkening up some of these lines just to really sort of emphasize the shape and kind of make it look a bit more finished. So generally speaking, I'm just going to grab my ruler here. Now, when you're doing things like that, you can even use your ruler, and don't be afraid to kind of go outside the lines. With this kind of design, you really are kind of going for that dynamic movement. You're trying to show the flow and the yeah, I suppose, yeah, flow is probably, there's no other better word I can think of at the moment. You're really trying to show that how the car moves and the general gist, I suppose, of the lines. So feel free to kind of flick your pen a bit and to hammer home those points. So we're going to make the bottom nice and dark as well. Now this is where the element of line comes in really handy. You can see that I'm using altering thickness of lines to communicate my point. So you generally want to give it a really nice solid base, because that's going to make the car look much more grounded and I suppose realistic in a sense. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shade in these lights. Don't be afraid to do little studies. If you do a light like that, you could almost draw up the light as a close-up next to it, just so you can really communicate what you're trying to achieve there. And that's effectively it. So really, you can also choose to perhaps shade in other areas. So if you think that this is sort of going to be a black plastic or something like that, choose to add details such as the rear view mirrors, something that you'll be practicing using a lot. I'm just going to shade that in, so I would be annotating that as saying that that's some sort of black plastic insert. And then let's just shade in a bit of a shadow where that's going to sort of be indented in the car a little bit. So we'd shade that in. Of course, the wheels, definitely make sure they're as black as possible. So nice, big, thick black lines, because that really helps make that car look quite finished. Now at the moment I'm probably going a bit over and above the quality of drawing that would be required for an idea generation page, so but I thought I might just extend on this just by showing you how you might go about finishing a car drawing like this before you, of course, perhaps take to it digitally or work on your rendering with Copics or anything like that. So, and again, we'll keep the wheels nice and simple. We don't want to draw too much attention to them because it's not really the design of the car. And that's effectively it. So you might then choose to just kind of add a few more little details here and there just to... and then we're going to do the same again with the more rounded version of the car, and effectively that's it. There's a lot more that you can do, specifically with rendering and colouring, but yeah, the main thing there, particularly for an idea generation page, is that you can communicate those effectively. So I'm just going to go once again, sharpen my pencil here. And then I'm going to get started on that. And also the next big thing that you're going to need to consider is, of course, where your annotations are going to go. So really plan out what you're going to be doing with your annotations. Yeah, it could be, I generally try to so point out some features and things that you were thinking as you were drawing it, but also make sure you do some critical analysis as well. This really nice, I like the aesthetic, but I might also write some sort of critical analysis overall that the design itself looks perhaps a bit dated. So it looks a little bit more like sort of a 90s or 2000s car. So I would talk about that in my critical thinking, and I would discuss what I might be able to do to bring it into the into 2020 and beyond. So that's something to consider as well. So just going to fast forward through this bit. All right, and there you have it. So that's basically my two ideas that I've explored. As I said, we do a bit of critical analysis here about whether we feel like they're modern enough and what we could do to perhaps make it more modern. And that can incite even some more research into what some more modern car designs could be. You could look at what the current trends are in car design and what they're doing as well. So a lot of this initial drawing could really just be that sort of early exploration, and of course you're opening the door to a million other things about how you can make your particular design more unique and evocative in its design. But generally speaking, that's your rough tutorial about your idea generation page for cars. So you would continue doing that, you'd continue doing that. You'd throw in a couple of perhaps some detailed drawings here, lots and lots of annotations. Remember, it's so much about annotations. You're really having a conversation with yourself about the overall design. So yeah, get started on that. Focus mainly on your proportions. Start with a really, really light F or H or 2H pencil. Give me some dark, confident lines after that so that we can really see the overall shape and flow of the design that you're intending on doing. And off you go. You're ready to rock and roll. Good luck with it.